So just 5 days left in 2015 in the hourglass. Let's take a look back and a look ahead with our roundtable this morning. From the Detroit Free Press, editorial chief Stephen Henderson is here. Syndicated political cartoonist Payne back with us. The civil rights chief for the city of Detroit, Portia Roberson, again with us. And so is the editorial chief at the Detroit News, Nolan Finley. Gang, thanks for being here. Happy New Year a little early and Merry Christmas a little late. But let's talk about the biggest, what you think 2015 is going to be remembered for. Stephen, I'm curious as to your big story of the year.
I think history will look back at 2015 primarily as the year that gay marriage became the law of the land in this country. I mean, just like other huge civil rights moments in history, I think this defines the year in sort of century terms, right? 100 years from now, people will still remember that, and some other stuff, not so much.
Does it feel settled to you?
It's settled. It's settled.
It's settled.
The Supreme Court says
Nothing.
no more bans on it. So,
Henry, what was your?
Yeah, no,
your
I mean, I think Stephen's right. The politicians are catching up with the public on this. That yeah, these social mores are very accepted in this country now. I'm going to go local. I'm going to say this is a huge year for the auto industry in this town. Not only the sales numbers, which will be the biggest in over a decade, but also the big three are back after really the toughest period in their history. Collectively, they're putting out some of the best product in the world right now.
I was remiss in not mentioning that you're also the auto writer for the Detroit News. Fascinating announcement that we just had here a couple weeks ago from Ford about all the money that they're going to pour into electrifying cars at a time when really cheap gas has made the Volt and other vehicles kind of a hard sell for people, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of that's driven by government regulation. I mean, the auto manufacturers are producing products for two customers right now, the public and the government, and they got to do the electric in order to meet the mandates.
Got to have a seat at the old cafe, no doubt about it. Portia, what's your big story of the year?
You know, I think there are a variety of big stories. I think Black Lives Matter and police brutality around this country and how we look at it, how we start teaching our police departments how to police you know, communities of color, communities that don't look like themselves. I think that's not going away anytime soon in terms of, I don't think that the protest or looking at that is going to go away in 2016, but I do think it came to the forefront in 2015, so I think that's going to be an issue. And of course, I think, you know, Donald Trump certainly made his mark in 2015, and unfortunately, he's not going to go away in 2016, although we can all keep our fingers crossed and keep hope alive. So, but this will be, you know, we'll talk about 2015 and we'll talk about Donald Trump running for president.
We cartoonists don't want Donald Trump to go away.
Ever, right?
Hang in there, Donald.
In fact, the leading conservative, one of the leading conservative voices in the state is sitting next to you. Yes. Interestingly, this is a place where I think you two actually are in agreement. You've been hoping Donald Trump was going to go away for a while, Nolan, but I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Still a little time left, but we're about 5 weeks away from
just three,
Iowa. 4 weeks away,
yeah,
from Iowa. I think it's. Who knows? I'm not thinking he's going to go away as easily as people thought. But I think the big story last year was the rise of ISIS, the sort of disintegration of the Middle East, the further disintegration of the Middle East, the failure to address this terrorist threat in its infancy when you had a chance to destroy it, has now left us with this really tremendous disrupting influence in a critical part of the world. And I'm not sure we've still figured out how we're going to address it, how we're going to deal with this.
Well, it makes it certainly, in fact, Stephen, you said a couple weeks ago on this program that what was happening with ISIS was completely changing the complexity of this presidential race that we're going in. And while it's a terribly important issue, is it the issue that we should be focused on right now, or is it outsized because these things are such glaring things when they occur?
You mean in the context of the presidential race?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the issue in the presidential race right now: national security, terrorism, ISIS. I think it's interesting the way Donald Trump has managed to twin that with immigration and make the two seem related, even though I think a lot of people would argue that they are not. And I think that's dynamite, political dynamite for the Republicans if that bleeds over into 2016. National security, they tend to be in the majority in terms of where people are. Immigration, they're in a distinct minority. So how do you sort of navigate those two. But I also think it's early in the cycle, and we don't really know yet what the big issue in this presidential campaign will be. That's going to come out as we get people voting in the primaries and as stuff happens in 2016.
It's interesting that I saw a poll the other day. 38% of Republicans put terrorism and national security as the #1 issue. It ranks third among Democratic voters, who 30% of say it's the economy that is the major issue. I'm not recall a time when the two parties were so much worried about two different things.
But I think the fact that those two issues are at the top, I think they're real echoes here of 1980, and I think the country's
I don't remember.
The country's this was
what happened?
Yeah, it was a big turn for the Republican Party. It was the beginning of the Reagan era. It was the end.
Well, it's funny you would say that, though, because after the budget passed last week, Rush Limbaugh came out and said the Republican Party might as well disband. There's no fight in them. They don't stand for anything in Washington anymore.
It was a win for both parties.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah, Speaker Ryan's such a radical left winger. But I think there was a turn with the Paris and the San Bernardino attacks. The country, the economy is just crawling along, and people are fearful.
Crawling along at a quick enough clip that we got to jump in interest rates. I mean, somebody is confident about where the economy is going.
But 2% growth should not be the new normal. I mean, but Nolan, let me finish the thought. What happened in 1980 and what took out Carter and brought in Reagan was the country felt insecure, and you have that moment now in the wake of San Bernardino, and Obama's jump the shark moment was at the time of Paris claiming that climate change was our greatest national security threat. That is not what the public sees.
But I think you can't look at individual issues this time. I think the greatest single issue in this election cycle is anger, voter discontent. You've got a lot of voters on both sides of the aisle angry about something, and a lot of people angry about different things. But the electorate is clearly discontented. You wouldn't have Bernie Sanders still drawing close to majorities in Iowa and New Hampshire on that side of the aisle if there wasn't this broad discontent with the political status quo.
Yeah.
And everybody can pick their own issue, but everybody seems to be mad about something this time.
It's really right. It's an anger-driven election, and there is something to that where we have watched the Carson Fiorina Trump success. Apparently nobody is concerned, Portia, that they might be supporting someone who's never worked in government before.
Right, because I think what we've seen, or what people are saying, is that they don't believe government works. So there's been this attraction to the person that's seemingly the outsider. And so somebody stands up and says, I'm not a politician. I actually host a television show called Apprentice, and I'd be a great president. And people feed into that because they fed into this notion that government doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for a while, and it's a broken system. So let's feed into that fear and start looking at candidates who aren't typical politicians.
Stephen, we're still very drawn to the idea of just the idea of a citizen politician, somebody who is not a professional, but can step out of their private life where they're very attached to what's real in Americans' lives and move into the government arena.
It's a really romantic.
It is. It is.
Can you name more than a couple instances where it's actually worked? I mean,
some would say Rick Snyder's a pretty good example.
Rick Snyder's, I think, maybe a better example than most. I mean, someone like Donald Trump, though, has not had had not had the kind of experiences you'd need to make the translation even from private sector to public. So
we'll start looking for the crystal ball. Then we'll look ahead to what is ahead for us in 2016. We'll take a quick break. This is Flashpoint. And we'll look forward back with more in just a minute.